everyone. So this is Abel here. So I'm going to do a supplementary video to the OpenClaw workshop last Friday. Right, so it's like 5 a.m. now. I'm currently in the library at Sunway Square Mall. So yeah, there are still some people here. So I'm just going to speak quite softly. Hope that it's not too soft. It's still audible to everyone. All right, so I also prepared this Google Docs inside our folder of like all these video recordings so that if you don't want to go through this video or like want a quick glance overview anytime, you can always refer to this Google Docs that about what we changed after the workshop. Okay, so for the first item, right, we added a folder called .openclaw container. And by the way, just to remind, we have these changes to fix the connection to the OpenClaw gateway inside the sandbox, which is the Docker container, because there were problems with the connection. That's why we couldn't start the OpenClaw gateway inside. So in order to fix the connection, the the first thing that we need to do is to have this OpenClaw container folder. So we use this to inject the gateway config file into the container. So apparently there's also a config file for the gateway. And the config file, right, the name is openclaw.json. Okay. So I'm going to go to my IDE. Okay, so this is the folder, top left. And there are also a lot of these files that you see inside, but they are auto-created when you run the container successfully. So not to worry, you don't need to add this yourself. Just look at the OpenClaw.json file. I also put in this example file so that I can copy paste and put something important inside, which I will tell you later. So in this OpenClaw.json file, make sure your model is what you want to use, right? Your model of choice. And your workspace also according to the volume bind mounts, the bind mounts, right, in your Docker Compose file. Because we map the agent workspace folder, right, in this repo to the workspace folder inside the container. Okay, don't need to care about this. And now for the gateway, right, we are, because it's inside a container, the gateway, we need a token, we need a way to connect to the gateway. So there are some like security measures, authentication, and we use a token. And this token, right, you generate it yourself. And how do you generate this yourself, right? Okay, so like I show you, like I've shown you here, we're going to use this command, openSSL ran-hex32. So you can install this package if you don't have it, and then you just run once. It will give you a randomly generated secret that you can put inside for your token, and you can run it a lot of times and can come up with different values. So you need to generate this yourself and then put inside the token here for your connection to the gateway inside the container. And this is very important. Your mode, right? The gateway mode is local because the gateway is already inside the container. It is local. The environment in the perspective of the agent, it is already local. It's already inside the container. We're going to see later on, right? When is it considered remote? But for this one, inside the container, it's local. And then there's also another property called control UI for the gateway. Control UI is actually a user interface to interact with the OpenClaw gateway. We don't really need to use it, but apparently this is actually a feature by OpenClaw. And in order to even start OpenClaw gateway, we need to have the config for control UI. And what is this config, right? Allowed origins. Origin is basically, you can think of it as the URL, the IP address. It's actually the scheme plus the IP address, the host and the port number, right? So it can be WebSocket or HTTP for the scheme. And why we need this, right, is because we need to restrict who can access the UI, control UI for the gateway. Because if we don't restrict access, anyone from any server, any host, any origin, they can just access your OpenClaw gateway and do really crazy things on your PC. So we don't want it to happen. And also because this is something required by OpenClaw. So we need to define who can access the gateway. And so we put just two origins, which are actually ourselves. Okay, so local host and this host used by OpenClaw, and the port number is the same, 18789. This is a standard for OpenClaw. This one also no need to worry. Yeah, just make sure your model provider is there. Okay, and apparently like a lot of this, I'll show you later on where I got this bit of the code from. Okay, so this is basically OpenClaw.json inside the container. This is the config file for container gateway. Okay, now we go to the agent workspace folder here. Agent workspace folder. This one, we also saw this last Friday. Okay, but then there are a lot more things here now. A lot of things, same thing again. They are auto-created. Don't need to worry. Yeah, actually, okay, no need to go through this actually. Docker also auto-created. Prompt skills we went through, logs, tests we went through. Docker ignore also, it was there already, auto-created. Okay, .env file. Okay, I'll just show .env example. Okay, this one, same thing as the OpenClaw JSON example file, right? Copy and paste and put inside your token. Okay, the gateway token. So this one, why we need to do it again, right? Is because this .env file, we are injecting it into the Docker container. So this is for the container. And just now what we saw earlier, in the OpenClaw JSON file, right? This one is for the OpenClaw gateway config. Now, I'm not too sure what's the difference between passing in the token to container and passing in token to OpenClaw gateway. But then for now, what I know is we do both. So we pass the env through we pass this token through the env file as well. Okay. Right. Docker compose.yaml. Okay. Now there are also like some important changes to the Docker compose file. For your container to start, we need to make sure a few things. Number one, we need to include an additional field, which is user. So this one is just to allow us access. Because I think previously without this line, right, without this field, I think some error happened. I forgot what was the error. So we just need to include this, and that's it. I think it's like for access to certain folders or files. I can't remember now. But yeah, just include this. Right, so we are passing our .env file into the Docker container. That's why we also specify the token inside. Okay, and also for the Docker compose file as well, for your environment field, we are also putting the token inside here. Okay, so we get the token from the env file, and then we pass it into this OpenClaw gateway token variable in the Docker compose file. Okay, so we reference the one from the .env file, and it will just evaluate. Okay, the rest are also same. Okay, now this one is new. So we are going to map our OpenClaw container folder, that one we saw earlier, right? Over here. We're going to map it into the container as well. We call it .openclaw folder. So this is a requirement by OpenClaw. So that's why we are creating the OpenClaw container folder. That one is used to store our gateway config file, right? That's why this config file is needed inside the container. We are mapping it into the container. And the rest are also same as well that we saw earlier, saw last week. Okay, now we go into the Docker file. Now to build the image for the container, there are some new things needed. When we first install the packages using apt, well, this is for bash. So we need to add in git. Okay, so I think there are some instructions using git along the way. So ran some error without the git package, like the git CLI. So we're just going to install it as well. And then for installing OpenClaw, right, itself, right, into the container. So the I would say the bad thing about OpenClaw right now is that it just keeps on changing so fast. And so there are some packages left behind. So upstream wise, some packages are not installed, are not bundled, right? Some packages are not bundled together with OpenClaw when you install OpenClaw. And so we have to do it manually. And from like, I think what's that called again? The issues, right? Issue section of GitHub, yeah, of the repo. Um, some people, I think they listed out the things, right? You need to install manually. And so these are the things, right, that you need to put inside as well into OpenClaw in order for the gateway to run. Also note that this is applicable to NPM. So if you use NPM to install OpenClaw, then I'm not sure if this applies to everyone, but if you use NPM to install OpenClaw, you need to have like these things added as well to install. If you use the official installation script that we saw last Friday, using curl command and get it from the website, then just follow the interactive shell and nothing bad will happen. Yeah, but for this one, you need to include all these packages, and then you can actually notice that these packages, right, they refer to specific apps or platforms like Luck. Not sure if you know Luck. Luck is actually a B2B kind of like platform, internal business operations. People use it for, yeah, just like team communications. And then Slack. I'm sure you know Slack. And then what was there? Discord. Yeah. So these are all actually like kind of like additional functionalities that you can use OpenClaw with. And even though like you choose maybe like by default it's optional feature, like you didn't choose to use this already with your OpenClaw agent, but then you need to already have like these kind of like packages, the prerequisites installed together with OpenClaw. So you just need to put it inside. And again, I'm not sure if everyone like kind of like faces this problem, but then when you use npm to install OpenClaw, yeah, sometimes I guess at least maybe for me, then it's like uh you will need like these additional packages to install alongside OpenClaw. And again as well, because OpenClaw like, just keeps changing very often. So just be aware of like which version you are at. For me, I just install like the latest one right inside the container. Okay, this one nothing different. Okay. And also, I want to go through this as well. Inside this image, right? The last line, we are already running the OpenClaw gateway inside the container. All right, so the image already contains it. OpenClaw gateway run, and then the port number, and then we bind it to LAN. So when we Docker compose the container, we are also running the OpenClaw gateway already. So we do need like start the gateway in our terminal. It's already done by Docker. So it's all automatic. And you will see later that, yeah, we can actually just start chatting with the agent. Okay, now after going through all this, right, there's one last thing, a very important file, which is not inside this repo, which is our local OpenClaw config file. So the previous config file that we saw, it was the config file for the gateway inside the container. But then locally, right, like if we use OpenClaw locally, like on our PC, our computer, without a container, there's also a config file for that. If you have installed OpenClaw locally into your computer, right, across your entire computer, not inside a container. So there's also a config file for that. And it is stored like the whole file is somewhere inside your like computer directory or somewhere for WSL. I'm using WSL Ubuntu. So it is inside my root directory and then OpenClaw.json file. Okay, and you can actually notice that the whole code, right, is actually similar to what we saw earlier in the container config file, right? OpenClaw container, OpenClaw.json. And in fact, it's actually the same thing. So it's the same thing, just that one very important difference. Okay, firstly, right, the workspace also is also different. We need to get our local OpenClaw config file to point to the workspace folder that we are setting inside the container. And so because we are mapping the agent workspace folder, right, in this repo into the container, we tell our local config file for OpenClaw to point to that workspace as well. Okay. And why are we also like bothering to even change this config file? Because this config file is for the TUI, the terminal UI. So we are using our terminal on our computer, our PC. We are using our terminal here to interact with the gateway inside the container. So our agent is living inside the container. Our prompts are from our terminal on our computers. That's why there is another config file for the TUI. Okay, so you can think of this config file for the TUI. So we are pointing the workspace to the workspace inside the container, right? Which is actually just inside this repo, right? So any changes inside the container, they will be shown inside this repo here instead of across anywhere in our computer. Okay. This one, okay. Okay, same thing as well for gateway, the token. To connect to the gateway inside the container, it must be the same token. Okay, authentication token and remote token. Okay, now this is very important for the config file locally on our PC. The mode, the gateway mode is remote because this perspective, right, is from the PC. And we want to connect to the gateway inside the container. So because the container is different from the PC, the mode of the gateway, right, is remote. The gateway is remote to the PC. So we put remote for the mode. Okay, and so that's it for the, I will call it the host config file. Okay, so um, usually we use the words host and container. So this is the host config file. Okay, host OpenClaw.json, host config file. And then for the one inside the OpenClaw container, this is the container config file. Okay, so just remember the difference, host and container. Okay, what else is there? Let me see the docs. Okay, auto creator, .env, Docker compose, Docker file. Mm, okay, okay, yeah. Also, wait, default workspace equation. Is that going to give you? Okay, can. Okay, now we are going to uh start our container. Okay, so after we, oh yeah, the README file. After we have finished building the image for the container and all files are done, okay, okay, yeah. So, okay, we went through this as well, this one, last Friday. Install CLI, which is the OpenClaw TUI, and then configure environment.env. Oh, wait. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, so make sure to set your authentication token to your gateway. And then, yeah, so yeah, basically just make sure again, right, in your host config file, you have the gateway set to remote. You insert your token inside. Okay. And your Docker Compose file as well, your gateway token. And then the volume, um, the folder right in your repo is also mapped to the container. Okay. Then we are now going to start the sandbox. We're going to start the container now. Okay, yeah, this one. Right. So we're going to run this command now. Okay, sorry. Okay. Because I've already built my uh, image, so I don't need to build again. So I'm just going to remove this flag. I'm just going to put it like this. Okay, so we're going to start the container. All right. Okay, so the building of the container, sorry, the building of the image will take quite some time. So especially because of the OpenClaw installation, the installation itself inside the container, it will take quite some time. So just be patient with that. Okay, now after it's done, right? Oh yeah. Okay, another important thing to note, once the container is up and running, right? And also I think for people who are first time using Docker, I think I covered this as well last week, but then make sure that your Docker is up first. You install Docker and then your engine is running, right, bottom left. Then you can see your container over here. Okay, after you start your container, right? Mm, okay, now this is very important. Okay, so you can think of it as like multiple layers of authentication besides the token, besides the what else is there? Yeah, okay, so token, right? And then we also need to do something called pairing. So for the first time using the gateway inside the container, we need to do authentication for the second time, which is to connect our device. Okay, so firstly, we're going to go into the container, go inside the container and do shell commands. So like what we covered earlier, right? Container is different from the host, right? The host is the PC. The container is a different environment altogether. We're going to go inside and run our commands inside. So docker exec -it, so interactive terminal, and then container name, bash. We're going to create like a bash. We're going to create a shell inside. Okay, so I'm going to just run this. Okay, once you see this part, right, that means you are already inside. So congratulations, you are inside the container. And then you're going to run this OpenClaw devices list. Okay, because I've already done the pairing for my devices, so it shows here that it's paired lah, the two devices. But then, if for the first time showing this, right, you'll see that your device, right, this row, it'll be shown above, and it's called pending. So it's pending for you to approve this device, and this is the request ID, right? This whole thing here. Uh, Okay, I mean, when it's above, right, the pending table, you can copy it directly, like the whole thing, the request ID, and you're going to put it inside here, your ID here, right? So I'm going to run this. Okay, so never mind, I've already run it. So you can just run it again, and then you exit the shell inside the container. Just exit the container straight away. Okay, I'm going to exit now. Okay. And once that pairing is done, right, you will see that back to the OpenClaw container folder, devices folder. Okay, so these are all auto-created. You don't need to do anything because the container is up and running, right? It's already automatically like modifying your files here and there inside a repo because it's mapped to your repo. And so we can see there will be this folder created called devices and pad.json file. You see all the devices connected to the gateway. Right. So it's like quite complex the letters, so don't need to go see this. Right. And the pending file, it's empty because there are no other devices requesting for connection to the gateway. Okay. Where were we? Okay. Now that is step four, right? We started the sandbox, the Docker container, right? We put the gateway inside the container and it's up and running now. Now, gateway is done. We will now start the TUI. So this is where we put the prompts for our OpenClaw agent. Okay, so we're going to just run a very simple command, OpenClaw TUI. Okay, by the way, I just remembered. Okay, so uh, for troubleshooting, for debugging, if you want to check like how is your gateway doing, like if there's anything wrong with it, right? There are two commands that you can use. Actually, I'm not too sure about the difference between them, but you can check it out yourself. So the first one is okay. So you can check the logs for the Docker for all the Docker containers created using Compose. And so because we specify the agent here is OpenClaw agent, I think it's the service name or something because it's not a container name. You need to specify the agent name. Oh, sorry, service name. Yeah, specify the service name inside the container, and then tail 30. So like kind of like shrink and just cut it off somewhere. Yeah, and then you also see error messages lah when if there's something wrong lah inside the logs. For now, this is normal. This is what you should be seeing lah if it's healthy. And the next command that you can use also is OpenClaw Gateway Health. Okay, and so it says it's okay. So very good, right? Everything's connected. Okay, but also what I noticed is that this command, OpenClaw Gateway Health, it can show okay, but there can still be something wrong. So because there are different parts to it, right? There's the container, there's the gateway. So even though the gateway is okay, other parts may not be okay. So just remember to check different things and as well make use of your um, LM assistant, see what is going wrong and understand it. Okay, I'm going to run the TUI now. Okay, so at first, right? Okay, I also noticed that sometimes when you uh, just started the TUI, it may show gateway disconnected, and that is okay. Like just wait for a while. It, sometimes it takes time to connect the gateway, and once it's connected, you can start chatting already, like what I've done here. So um yeah, and also make sure that you can actually see where it's connected to. Okay, so make sure that it is what it is, the the origin. Okay, WebSocket and um, the host and the port 18789. Okay, the agent name is main because we call it main somewhere. Oops. OpenClaw JSON. Yeah, okay. So the name and ID is main. Yeah, you can change this as well if you want to. Inside a container config file. Right. So agent main, session main. And also like sometimes like it may take some time to respond the agent. So like once you're prompted, maybe like you need to wait for a while for it to give back an answer or something. So you can just wait as well and see uh if there's an answer. Okay, so what I did here, right, was I told you to create a file called hahaha and then write hahaha into it. And so it said, right, it told me that it actually did it. And I asked where is the workspace because all the files that it does, right, the agent does, they're going to be saved inside the workspace that we defined, inside the container. And how to check if it's actually there, right? So I asked where's your workspace, right? And it says my workspace is at slash workspace in this environment. And that is what we want to confirm because we don't want it to be anywhere inside our computer. This is actually what we define in our Docker Compose file where we map our folders to the folders inside the container. And so how to check this as well? We go to agent workspace folder because we map to agent workspace and hahaha is there. Okay, hahaha. So one line, everything is correct. And so that is the read write file IO function that we put for the agent. So this is one of the skills lah. Um, you can get more skills for your agent through Claw Hub, and there are also many other ways. But this is just a very very simple skill to introduce how to interact with the agent. Right. So this is also step 7. Wait. Step 6 of file IO run. Right. What we wanted to do last Friday. Okay. So I can do it one more again to see how it goes. Okay, so you need to wait for a while for it to complete its task. Okay, so once it responds, right, okay, you can go and check. So every single thing that the agent does, right, it will be restrained. It will be limited to the workspace that we defined inside the container. And where is it? Okay, agent.txt. Mm, agent. All right. Yep. So this is what we want. Yeah. And this is all for our workshop. Um, using how to set up OpenClaw and use it with a sandbox environment, execution jail, and how to like use like implement skills for the OpenClaw agent. Okay, thanks everyone. See you again in our next workshops.